Going into this launch, you could tell interest was a lot lower than people had hoped. I think there are definitely some individuals that played a part in that. I think there is definitely a grift with hating on zombies that didn't pan out the way that it did last year. If you were talking crap about Liberty Falls, it's ironic it ended up being the most played map ever, but the interest in Liberty Falls was still astronomical compared to Ashes of the Damned. Ashes of the Damned, in my opinion, is probably the strongest launch map we've gotten in years. I thought Terminus was pretty strong, but this I think this blows it out the water, no pun intended. Ashes is a great map. The interest going into it was a little iffy. Marketing obviously was all over the place for BO7, so that probably played a part as well. But the hunt was longer than I think we all expected, and that's a good thing. People wanted a long hunt. The steps they chose for the Easter egg, there are some flaws with them, as I'm sure we'll touch on, but atmosphere-wise, beautiful as a reimagining and a spiritual successor to Transit. I think it's solid. I really like the Wonder Weapon. I think the gameplay loop is fun, but they ended up nerfing the boss fight yesterday, which I also didn't expect them to do on the scale that they did. And then we'll talk about curse mode as well, but thoughts on the map itself so far from what you've been able to play and from the Easter egg that you've been able to beat?
Yeah, I just beat it last night for the first time, and I think maybe a day or two after it came out, we hopped in a 4-squad, like I think Taco Sniper, me, you, and we got to the boss fight, all kitted out, whatever, and we lost the boss fight, and I think you've already completed it at that point.
We failed.
I believe so. So you knew the attacks, you knew sort of what's going on. You know, Taco did it too.
Yeah.
You guys knew what was going on. We still lost, and we're all like pretty good players. And so that was like the first sort of tick for me that I'm like, all right, I think something's gonna be done here, because as someone who kind of lives and breeds Call of Duty, not just zombies but every mode. You kind of like, obviously maybe I shouldn't beat things the first time, but I was in a squad with people that have already done it, that are also very good players, and we lost. Like, we completely just lost. And I do think it needs to be tweaked a little bit, the boss fight. I now see a lot of people saying that it went too far, and it's just completely just whatever boss fight. It's not hard in the slightest. Obviously they're doing these things because maybe they saw that the completion rate was insanely low, and it's like, okay, all this dev time went into this and people aren't even going to care about it because it's too hard. I think that's an angle to it that you gotta keep in mind, that there are a lot more people that aren't good at the game compared to people that are. So it's kind of difficult to balance that out, in terms of, obviously in this day and age of the hyper online community, and people wanted harder boss fights, and we got one, then it got nerfed, and you can go down that whole rabbit hole. But I think, given the already kind of low reception, or maybe not reception, but I think interest to BO7 comparatively to even like a BO6 map drop, in my personal opinion, I think they needed to do something like this to sort of conjure up the interest back, with guides, with cursed mode, because cursed mode is just like, obviously, never mind. We're gonna talk about that a little bit later. We're talking about just that map Ashes in general. But,
well, you got to go back to the domino effect, right? This is all connected, by the way. Marketing was odd for BO7. It was kind of sporadic. There was spurts of good reveals, but then there was these weird delays and weeks here, weeks there, where nothing was going on top of the narrative already being pushed by certain people saying that it was just more Black Ops 6. Sure, but there was so much to be appreciated about what the game was improving compared to BO6, which I don't think was highlighted enough by marketing folks, let alone creators. Narrative was real rough for BO6 Zombies, so that's another like subtraction of interest there for Black Ops 7 going into it. And then you got to think about you got to think about how many casuals there really are playing zombies these days. And I feel like this doesn't get talked about enough either. I put a tweet out about it on my main yesterday because I was really thinking about it. I'm like, look, the amount of casuals playing zombies is insane. And although campaign might not be as relevant to zombies focused players, right? That definitely did help review bomb BO7 a little bit. You know, the sentiment surrounding campaign, that's not good. You obviously have, lower sales because of Game Pass, because of, back-to-back title fatigue. All these factors we can throw into a pot here to help gauge why the interest in BO7 zombies wasn't as hot. So when you think about a casual, right, who doesn't have much time to play, wants to jump into this map, which is by far one of the more difficult modern zombies maps they've put out in years, what would encourage them to say, hey, I want to either, one, do difficult side quests and repeat a boss fight after barely getting through them, two, play a hardcore version of this mode and go to several high rounds to find relics when I couldn't even get past some of the initial things in standard, and three, a couple of days after the map initially came out, which again is not that long. People are still getting used to the fundamentals of this game, of the map. Three, just getting used to things. Why would I then, want to move on to the next tough task inside of Black Ops 7 Zombies? Like, where's that stepping stone of progression? If they can't get past the first thing, why are they looking in all these other directions? Hence why interest has also been, pretty low for Cursed. Very few people are hunting it. It's pretty much just data miners and those folks in a certain corner. Narrative also being not all that great. I'd say Terminus still had like a stronger launch narratively than Ashes, but put all that together, it makes sense why there might have had to be a huge pivot with difficulty here. Why there was what people are calling like a rug pull. It's just the fact that so few folks are probably jumping into this, and there is a discrepancy I want to mention real quick. The achievement rate for, I think, any of the trophies for Black Ops 7 Zombies, especially the main Easter egg, was sitting at like 0.04% on Xbox, not even 1% on PlayStation. Does that account for all of COD HQ? Like, does that account for all players that have booted up MW2, 3, BO6, and now BO7? Or do those trophies just account for Black Ops 7? We don't really know. That's worth thinking about too, because that could explain why the achievement rate is so small. But regardless of what the reasoning is, for the earn rate being so small, it's just the fact that it is. And if you're looking at those numbers, you compare them to Liberty Falls, Terminus, you compare them to The Machine, compare them to Blood of the Dead and Voyage of Despair. I do think we're looking at some of the lowest completion numbers we've seen in years for a launch main Easter egg. And what do you think that means for the post-launch if the eggs are on par with Ashes, with the tough boss fight and tedious steps, a lot of RNG with part locations? That's not going to look good. And you don't want those numbers to stay low if you want zombies to thrive and succeed, because higher ups at Activision are going to be like, hey, why are we which we already saw happen with Cold War, by the way. Numbers were rough with BO4 to where Cold War was a big pivot and a full reboot in a sense with how gameplay worked, how quests were worked, and how they were guided. If you don't want to see a big pivot again, then yeah, we got to get these numbers up. Like the Matthew McConaughey gift there. Got to get those numbers up. So if you don't get those numbers up, it's just not going to be good. You'll see budget cuts. You'll see a really weird shift halfway through BO7 cycle where the quality of quest and gameplay and map design goes down. We don't want to see another BO4 again where that happens. We don't want to see that. So this is one of those like necessary sacrifices, unfortunately, that had to happen, where they change certain things around Ashes, where they change how certain steps work. Maybe they make them easier. They make the boss easier. That's where this came into play. Because already it was a different quest where it's not just get Wonder Weapon, do a lockdown boss fight. That's what most of the modern zombie Easter eggs have been like. This was, hey, get Wonder Weapon, then you actually start the Easter egg, which is what I've been looking for in modern zombie quests for years. I was hoping that we'd get away from the repetition, which we did. However, to do all that and to fail the boss instantly is not what people are going to like to do. You're not going to see folks probably trying to retry this right away. You're going to have folks that are like, well, I did all that shit just to die instantly and an unbalanced boss. No. What I thought from the get-go, like I know you were talking about, is for solo players, it's already rough. You got to get some balancing there for solo. And even for co-op, you got to have it to where there's a rhyme and reason. There's a formula. There's a way to master the phases of the boss to where it's fair. Doesn't mean nerf it into the ground. Nobody was asking for that. But that's kind of what happened. I still think if it's your first time going in, even on directed mode, you can still struggle with the boss. It's not a guaranteed completion. If you're like a content creator or a great zombie player, or you're somebody that has gone to the boss multiple times, yes, it'll be a cakewalk. And that's unfortunate. But so look on the bright side of things, more people now will be interested in doing the side quests on the map, repeating the boss fight to master it, and let alone going into Cursed. I won't touch on Cursed just yet. Still talking about just the map alone. Gotta say, I'm not a fan of the way the clock step kind of works, because I'm aware that you apparently could hit the clock multiple times in one round. You got to hit different faces. Doesn't always work for me that way. I feel like every game is different when we try it. I feel like it's meant to be this thing where, yeah, you could hit all the sides of the clock to get more attempts. Because if you don't have more attempts, then this entire Easter egg becomes do this, pass a round, do this, pass 3 rounds, do this, wait 2 rounds. I don't like that. There's a way to optimize it, obviously. People can say, oh, just get good and learn it. It's like, well, it's buggy. Sorry. Things don't always work the way they should. The lightning step at Diner, at least, you can force again. If, let's say, you fail one of the escorts of the lightning bolt, you can go ahead and, shoot the light post with old Tessie. Then you can force your way back in. So that's cool. But other than that, I think the Wonder Weapon quest is really straightforward. I do like it. It's a good Wonder Weapon. Yes, you could pack a punch it. To obtain it, not too tough at all. I like the presence of Klaus as well. Klaus being involved is cool. Maybe that's a little sprinkle of Craig Houston back at the studio writing again. We got Klaus back from Modern Toten. We got to figure out what happened to him after you went into the Dark Ether. So it's cool. Like there's some really strong beats here. With the main Easter egg and with the map atmosphere, with the layout, I do like the ability you can jump pad, you can drive Old Tessie, you can teleport to Old Tessie, and you can summon Old Tessie to you at Ashwood. Like, there's many ways to get around here, which I do like. Lots of options. Definitely lots of options, but I'd say narratively, Ashes is still not where I think the Dark Ether story deserves to be. Like, there was that great Dempsey side quest you guys saw footage of earlier. Like, that's a brilliant side Easter egg, one of the best we've gotten ever for Dempsey. The dialogue's great amongst our original characters. Terminus crew doesn't really, or Requiem doesn't really get too much great dialogue in this map, but at least the OG characters do for the most part. New Takeo voice actor, brilliant. Definitely an honor, and definitely honoring Tom Kane with that. That's been great to see. But Disciple Injection's got to go, by the way. Like, unless they buff it, it's not good. It's just not good. I do love, there's new equipment to experiment with. Like, if you just throw those hunter drones in the air as your tacticals, they'll just sit there and wait for the elites to spawn in, or they'll wait for the tougher enemies to spawn in. That's cool. I do like, experimenting with new equipment. It definitely does not play just like BO6. Like, there are other things you could experiment with. There's a cool trap.
I got a really different vibe from BO6 zombies to BO7. Like, it feels like a new game. It feels like a different experience entirely. And Ashes is Ashes of the Dam is a pretty solid map. I don't think it's necessarily bad by any means. It's fun. You drive around. It's very cinematic. The scenery is awesome. Skybox is cool. Locations are kind of cool. I feel like there's just like a lot of, like, when you're in the little survival areas, the little survival maps, like Farm, like Cosmodrome, and then driving to those areas, I don't know, I feel like there's so much dead space, but like when you're actually playing on the map, it's really good. But I feel like driving from location to location, or even jump padding, I don't know, it kind of feels like, at times it kind of feels like just a bunch of survival maps stitched together with a road between them, which that's kind of what it is, because they are actually making most of them into survival maps, which I don't.
Welcome back, Transit.
I'm not necessarily saying that as maybe like a negative thing. Like, I'm upset about that. I'm just saying, that's just kind of how it feels. Mm-hmm. Those play spaces are just sort of those smaller areas. Ashwood, I think Ashwood is probably my favorite area out of all those. That, or either Exit 115. Ashwood is a little bigger of a place. Yeah, and it's very cool.
Right. I think the loop is fun. I'd say, to kind of piggyback off what you said with like the dead space, I feel like if you're not doing side Easter eggs or the main quest, you'll definitely feel that. I think if you start to utilize, or you start to engage in some of the bonus secret activities around the map, let alone the main quest, then you will feel like a lot of the areas of the fog actually play a role in the story and a role in your gameplay loop for that game that you're playing. But if you're not doing any of those things, then yeah, you're pretty much just going for survival map to survival map and, doing what you got to do. Pack-a-punch you can bring with you anywhere. That's awesome. I think that's again, a huge step up from the very tedious and annoying Pack-a-punch setup from the original Transit.